for connecting with us. As Carla said, if you have any questions, just put them in the chat, and then we'll try to respond as soon as possible, as soon as we receive them. So this part of the training will be focusing on general reminders about the ICS process, about the general ICS rules that need to be followed. So here we go. Let's kick it off. So here we have the ICS auditor training on the processes and the different reminders. So we'll start with the auditor capacity and some general things that are already in the ICS agreement that is available on our external website, and that we've also put in the Q&A, the public part of the Q&A. So we have certain parts that are in the agreement that are also present in the ICS guidelines. So we'll go through the integrity, the training, language requirements, and also legal requirements. Of course, regarding confidentiality and information sharing, we do not allow audit companies to share visit dates with factories for unannounced or semi-announced audits. The visit dates can only be shared and convened for completely announced audits, and the audit companies are obviously not allowed to share any confidential audit information with the factories. So as you know, you can only share the Excel file. You cannot share the entire ICS questionnaire, for example. The name of the auditor is also not to be communicated to the factory, to the supplier, to any intermediary before the audit takes place. You also need to avoid that the factory representatives have any direct contact details, an email, telephone number of the auditor before, during, and after the audit. So how do you do this? You can provide your auditors with generic visit cards that only have a generic email address without any personal contact details. So of course, all of this has been written down in the ICS agreement, ICS contract that is available on our website, and that all of the ICS audit companies need to sign if they wish to work with ICS. All auditors, of course, need to be properly trained in ICS methodology, and you are also required to have excellent knowledge of the ICS guideline. So this is one of the trainings that we will be providing. We will also organize other trainings in different countries. So we're planning on going to Italy and Turkey in the autumn, and we have also organized trainings in Brazil and in France. So we are working on having a local collaboration and meeting auditors and audit companies representatives in different countries, so we can exchange, and if anything needs to be updated, we can take in all of the feedback. So we have certain our tools and certain specific trainings for audit companies and auditors that are available on the ICS database. So for now, this is open to program managers, but as we give access to auditors as well, you will be able to connect to the ICS database, and you will have access to all of the different documents as well. And some of the ICS tools are also available online on our external website that is accessible by anybody. So we have the ICS codes of conduct, we have the handbook for factories, best practices fact sheets, all of them available. So here you have a little screenshot. It's on our website ics-so.org/resources, and then you have the different resources that are also translated into different languages as well. We also have certain requirements when it comes to auditor language proficiency. So when you are auditing, for example, in a foreign country, you should speak the local language. If you do not speak the local language, then you need to be accompanied by interpreters. This also goes for any factories that are within your country, but where you know that the workers are, for example, migrant workers, and they do not speak the country's language. So in that case, you would need to be accompanied by an interpreter as well. Also, auditors are expected to be at least upper intermediate level English user. So this is also something that is written in the ICS audit body agreement. So as I've said, you need to be accompanied by an interpreter if you do not speak the language of the workers that are present, or if you are auditing in a foreign country. So here, the audit companies are of course responsible for providing interpreters. The interpreters themselves, of course, need to be indicated in the audit report if they have worked during the audit or after the audit. And when I say after, it's possibly for any translation purposes that you would need for the audit report itself. Of course, the interpreters would need to be fluent in all of the languages that are subject to translation, and they need to be present on site. So this is important. They do not need to, they mustn't be present remotely during the entire duration of the audit. So just like the interpreters, any additional people that are following the audit that is taking place should also be indicated in the ICS audit report. So here, for example, you might have an ICS member representative that has decided to follow the audit, or you may even have the ICS team that is shadowing the audit, and in that case, we need to be indicated right here as shown on the screenshot. The auditors are, of course, expected to cite the latest versions of the applicable local laws and, of course, keep up with the latest legal developments. There are several questions that refer to the local law. In this case, you're of course required to fill in the legal references for both informative questions. So here what we call informative questions are those that do not have a number and that are not rated. And of course, for any relevant questions that refer to local legislation. So here, for example, we have the question 837 from the ICS Social Complete questionnaire saying, okay, do emergency exit doors comply with local requirements? So as soon as we ask you to refer to the local law, you are to cite the references and then reply according to it. Okay, so now moving on to the audit documents, their completion, their modification, and then their upload onto the ICS database. So when you are completing audit documents, you're of course asked to generate certain templates. So you have the CAP template, the corrective action plan, the AN, the alert notification, and then the interview template. So each time that you make a modification or you update the questionnaire, you need to click on the relevant button, and then the macros will generate a template. So we have received certain feedback coming from audit companies saying that certain auditors may have trouble generating the different templates, so either the CAP, the AN, or interview templates. So what we've found so far that works is that if you save the questionnaire on your computer directly, so on the C drive and not on a D drive or E drive or a cloud or external storage, it works better. We also recommend making sure that the path to the folder where you have the questionnaire is not too long. If it's too long, the macro does not work, so the templates may not be generated as easily. We also ask you to fill in and generate the interview template with as much detail as possible. And here you will need to provide detail on both non-compliances that you have identified and also any relevant facts that you may find pertinent, as this can contain valuable information for the members of the facility, its workers, and so on. So the interview template itself is not given to the factory management. It is confidential. So if you have any issues that were raised during collective or individual interviews, please put it in the interview template. Regarding, training, or if you have any questions on how the interview template should be filled in, we have provided what we call the golden report interview template that is available on the ICS database and that can be downloaded and used. Of course, so this is a question of making sense. If you are saying in the interview template that there are no non-compliances, of course check that this is coherent with what you've said in the ICS questionnaire. So please make sure that the information between the two, of course, matches. And as I've said before, the interview template is not only for non-compliances, but as put right here, it's also for relevant information, any issues, and of course, non-compliances. And the latest document that needs to be on the ICS database is the factory profile. So Carole has already spoken about the factory profile, so I'll just go quickly through this. Is that the part that needs to be verified by the auditor on site so far is color-coded. So this is the feedback that we have received on several occasions from different auditors saying that it's time-consuming to fill in the entire factory profile. So now we're only asking for certain information to be verified, not all of it. So if you see here, which is in the darker green, it needs to be verified for all types of audits. The type that is only in a grayish blue, it only needs to be verified for social audits. The lighter green, it needs to be verified only for environmental audits. And then you have the orange part, which we are not asking you to verify at all. So we are hoping that by restricting the number of questions that need to be verified during a certain audit will help you limit the time that is passed on the factory profile verification. So as I've said, each time you make any modifications regarding any templates, you need to regenerate them. And also what is important is that you do not make any modifications regarding ratings directly or template formats. So don't change, try to change the formulas, don't try to change the macros. This is really, really important. Don't try to change the format. So if the ICS questionnaire is in Excel, leave it as an Excel file. Also, all audit documents need to be uploaded onto the ICS database in a timely manner within 10 working days or less following the audit visit date. So you may have certain rules within your respective audit companies that differ or maybe are maybe shorter than 10 working days, but the ICS rule is that the audit report needs to be on the ICS database within 10 working days. When you upload the audit documents onto the ICS database, also make sure that you have indeed validated the upload. So you can do this by clicking on the validate button, which is in the upper right corner of the factory page. As I've said, also, the audit documents need to be uploaded using the correct format and the original format. Do not put any additional protections or passwords onto the ICS document. So here you can see that, for example, the ICS photos need to be as a Word file, or we have accepted the derogation that they be in an Excel file, PDF file. The alert notification needs to be an Excel file. The interviews also need to be an Excel file, and so on and so on. Also, please make sure that there are no corrupted or infected or potentially corrupted or infected files that are uploaded onto the ICS database. So this is really important in order to preserve the data that is on the ICS database. And now moving on to the final part regarding different details of the audits themselves. So we will go through the audit planning, the audit scope, the different methodology that needs to be used, different templates, and then certain details regarding narrative summary and the privacy, worker privacy. Moving on to planning. So when it comes to scheduling and lead time, the scheduling is done, well, the ICS members are the ones that mandate and manage the ICS audit. So they are the ones that would go to the ICS database and then launch the audit request according to their respective audit campaigns. What is really important right here is that ICS audits cannot be requested by factories or suppliers. So if you have a factory or a supplier that contacted you asking for an ICS audit, you would need to tell them that it is only the ICS member that can launch this request. So follow-up audits can be launched following 12 months following the initial audit. During the COVID-19 period, we have extended this lead time to 18 months. When it comes to follow-up audits, they can be launched 3 months after the initial audit. So this is the general rule for social audits. However, during the recent working groups on tools, we have added certain exceptional cases. So here you have the numbers of the questions. So these are coming from the ICS Social Complete questionnaire. So if these are identified, then you can launch a follow-up audit immediately. However, if the follow-up audit takes place in less than 3 months and the non-compliances remain, and then of course they would still need to be rated as non-compliant. So this is the rule going for social audits. When it comes to environmental audits, with the recent change in rules, the lead time has been cut to basically 0. So if the ICS member decides to launch the follow-up audit immediately after the initial audit, they are allowed to do so. The scheduling is done entirely on the ICS database. So as I've said, the audit request is launched on the ICS database by the ICS member. Once the audit request is launched, a notification is sent. So here, just make sure that you have approved this address so that you could receive the different notifications coming from the ICS database. Also, what is important when you're scheduling an audit is that you do not include the ICS team. So you have the email domain monkey.fcd.fr. If it's identified, don't include it in the scheduling emails. The ICS team may put their address in the contact details, but we're doing this for tests, so please do not include us. Also, what is important, and Carol has spoken about this during her presentation as well, you would need to fill in the planned visit date and also the auditor's name on the ICS database as in advance as possible. So this is really important because now, as we are giving access to the ICS database to all of the auditors, they need to be put on the database so they can access the factory profile, and then later on the ICS questionnaire as well, because we are planning on putting the questionnaire on our database online and offline as well. When you're scheduling the audit, you should not inform the auditors of the exact factory's name and location before 2 days before the audit takes place. So that is the moment they need to know the exact name, the exact address. So they may know the general information that the audit is taking place somewhere, so they can prepare, but the exact location, the exact factory's name should not be shared before. So this is something coming directly from the ICS contract that we have signed with all of the ICS audit authorized companies. Also, it's important, there is no direct contact or communication between the auditor and the audited factory before or after the audit takes place. So we have talked about this. Do not share your personal emails. Use a generic email address when you communicate if you need to use it. Otherwise, so for example, if you want to print out a CAP file, use a USB key, for example. During scheduling as well, we are asking our members to put in an audit window of at least 14 available days in total. This goes for, you know, any audit. However, we are acutely aware that factories may not always be available on certain days that are within the audit window that was initially intended by the ICS member. So in that case, the audit window can be extended, but you know, the total of available potential dates still need to be 14 days. When you accumulate all of the potential dates, it needs to rise to at least 14. And also, when you're scheduling, please make sure that you're not scheduling during bank holidays that are in the country, and don't go into the factory during a holiday. It may be, of course, it may be closed. So when it comes to this, when you're talking with the factory, make sure to ask them if there are any holidays, any bank holidays coming up, so you do not send your auditors during these days. Okay, so moving on now onto the audit scope. So the physical scope of the ICS audit covers the entire factory's premises. So this, of course, includes production areas, storage areas, workers' living and eating areas, and any and all associated buildings that are near or on the site of production. So here it may be the administrative buildings, the offices, and so on and so on. So what is important, that sections that are currently under construction should not be audited, of course, for security reasons. However, just make sure that no worker is endangered because of the construction and that it does not hinder any other requirements. So, for example, you know, that the assembly points are not within the section that is currently under construction, and then there are safe accesses, etc. So the general rule when it comes to the audit scope is that one audit equals one business license, one address. However, there are certain exceptions when it comes to this general rule. So, for example, if a factory has multiple production sites, but only one business license, you can audit only a part of the global scope of the entire business license. However, there are certain rules when it comes to this. You can do this only if the unit's buildings are different, the workers do not work across units, and the products are different, the factory documents are different. Also, if a factory, for example, has multiple production sites that are located at different addresses, but under the same business license number, and that have the same documentation for all sites, in that case, you can, with the express validation by the ICS member, and this is really important, you can do an audit for each site, but have the documentation review be common if the audits are performed on the same day. In this case, of course, you would need to provide detailed comments in the narrative summary of the audit report. So we have covered the physical scope, and now when we go to what are the workers that are covered, so all of the workers holding a job on the factory site, no matter the employment contract, no matter the relation they have with the direct employer or indirect employer, need to be covered by the audit. So this means you would include both permanent workers and temporary workers, and of course contractors, apprentices, and so on and so forth. So this is really important, and contractors are not always included in the scope, as we've been able to see. So contractors may, for example, be canteen employees. They may be security employees that are not direct employees of the factory itself. They could have been, recruited by a recruitment agency. So in that case, please include them in the scope as well. Go through their registers, their documents, and so on and so forth. When it comes to migrant workers, you need to include both internal and external migrants in the audit scope. So here, for example, we have an example of China. So the first question here was rated no, that given that the auditor thought that given that there were no foreign workers, then there are no migrant workers. However, they would need to include them. So please write a comment, even though they're coming from another province. If they're coming from Sichuan or Hunan, in that case, they need still to be included, and you still need to go through their documents, contracts, and so on. When it comes to interview sampling sizes, you can see here the table where we provide them. So we always welcome any feedback on this process and specific situations that you encounter during your audits. So here you can see that according to the number of workers, you have a certain number of interviews that need to be conducted. So up to 150, you need to conduct 8 interviews, between 151 and 513, and so on and so forth. With the latest change, with the 2020 version, is that if there are more than 3,201 workers present on site, you would need to include at least 1% of the workforce in your interviews. So these are the interview sampling sizes for the ICS environmental audits. So these were social, and these are now environmental. So the difference between the two is that for social audits, we would ask you to focus on certain specific categories of workers that are different from the environmental ones. So here you would need to interview the environmental management, the chemical management, water, energy, emissions to air, wastewater, waste management, and so on. So the categories are different between the two. If, for example, you detect a certain alert or a sensitive topic that you would like to investigate a little bit further during your interviews with the workers, you can, of course, increase the number of interviews that need to be conducted. However, what you cannot do is have fewer interviews than those that are within the ICS guidelines. When you go to the factory, when it comes to the sampling size, you need to request documentation for at least 12 months. However, there are exceptions. For example, for new facilities, as long as during the audit there can be a sample of a minimum of 3 months that can be randomly selected for review. So this applies for document review as well, unless it is requested by the ICS member. So what does this mean? This basically means that the ICS member can, in certain cases, wish to choose the months that need to be taken into account. So this goes for example, follow-up audits. When it comes to worker selection for the interviews, the auditor is the one to select the relevant workers that should be interviewed and not the management. The auditor, of course, is invited to select what we could call vulnerable workers. So, for example, categories such as migrant workers, worker representatives, or members of a union, piece rate workers, temporary workers, older or specifically younger workers, contractors, new and expecting mothers, and so on and so forth. So this is really important that they need to be interviewed because they are deemed more vulnerable and there are more risks associated with these type of workers. When it comes to conducting interviews as well, you need to make sure that you do not disturb or increase the working hours of on-site workers. So, for example, if you are told by the factory that the workers finish their working day at, let's say, 3 p.m., and you were planning on conducting interviews in the afternoon, just switch it up maybe and have the interviews in the morning and then do document review in the afternoon. Also, the audit timing and schedule should be defined by the auditor in consideration with the working hours in the factory's organization. Now, when it comes to the audit methodology, so for example, when we have non-compliances that have been solved on the day of the audit, so for example, you have an object that is located on the emergency path, and then the factory management removes it immediately, you still need to report this as a non-compliance in the audit report. So it will be flagged in the CAP. But however, you can indicate in the comment section that the non-compliance has been immediately closed, so the management has removed the box. So why is this important is that what we are looking for is actions that are permanent, and if the issue is not flagged in the CAP, then maybe the management will not be instigated to work on a permanent solution, and then the non-compliance can be repeated in the future. We are also asking you to provide a comment for all questions, even the ones that are rated compliant. So you see here, this is a screenshot that we took from an audit questionnaire. So you have a question with a rating and then a comment right here, and the comment simply states yes. So this is not sufficient. We are asking for comments so we know what the method you used to prove the compliance. So please provide as much details as possible on any relevant information for the ICS members in the ICS questionnaire. Also, and this seems rather obvious sometimes, but the comment that you provide right here also needs to provide the answer to the question right here, and then the two need to be coherent. So, for example, if we ask is the evacuation plan in a language understood by workers? Then you would need to answer yes or no when it comes to the language that is used, and not if the evacuation plan is posted in each production area. You should also indicate what record types and sources you consulted and the inconsistencies that you found. So this was a question actually coming, and a suggestion coming from one of the audit companies currently present. So in this way, we can make sure that all audit companies and all auditors are following exactly the same approach. Now, moving on to the audit templates. So you are required to use only the latest and the correct version of the available ICS tools. So this goes even for follow-up and re-audits. You are, of course, required to use a blank template for each new audit and not reuse old ones. Also avoid copy and paste. When it comes to the narrative summary, so if you have any issues, for example, that arose during the audit, let's say an argument that happened between the auditor and the management, in that case, report it in the narrative summary part of the questionnaire. You can also provide comments on any general circumstances that you observe or feel inside the factory. So, for example, you have it here in the interview template. And also you have certain questions and certain details in order to describe the general feel of the factory. So if there are any odors, heat, noise, and so on and so forth. You're also asking you to protect workers' privacy. So there are several steps that need to be taken for this. First of all, do not take pictures of workers' faces without a relevant reason. So just avoid it. There are two ways of avoiding it. Either you take the picture from behind, so the worker's face is not on the photograph, or the second option is that if you were forced to take the picture with the face shown, in that case you can either blur it, or you can hide it by using a dot or something like that. What is really important as well is that workers' names and identity should not be revealed in the audit questionnaire either. When it comes to photographs, besides the fact that you would need to hide workers' faces, you would also need to have an automatic date and time stamp. And this goes not just for the non-conformities, but all photos in general. We have also added a question in the audit questionnaire and in the interview template for the auditor to report if there were conditions ensuring confidentiality of the interviews. So, for example, if you had a separate room without any cameras or recording materials, or if the management was just outside and eavesdropping on the entire interview process. The inconsistency that you find during the interviews need to be reported in the interview template. So we went through this. But what is important is that you do not put the entire details in the cap. You would put the non-conformity, of course, in the cap, but the additional details should be provided in the interview template. So this is important because the interview template is not given to the factory management, but the cap is. So this is really to protect them. And now we have gone to the final part of the presentation. So we'll just go quickly through two topics: worker representatives and strikes. So you are required to invite worker representatives to be present during opening and closing meetings with the factory management. So here we have a question that is present in the ICS questionnaires, asking you if they were present at both those meetings. If they were not, we would ask you to indicate the reason why this was the case. For example, this could be because there are simply no worker representatives, no union members. Or also this could be because, for example, they are not there during the closing meeting because the closing meeting took place after their shift ended, and they did not stay for the closing meeting. So these are just some of the examples that could arrive during the audit. So in that case, just write a little comment saying, okay, for this reason or that reason, they could not be present. Also, please indicate if worker representatives were included in your interviews. And finally, regarding worker strikes, if you have any information on any labor disputes, any strikes, any demonstrations, in that case, you would need to inform ICS members in the audit report about any given strikes that may have taken place in the previous 2 years. So you have a little comment box right here. You can, of course, interview the workers and go through the information and see if there was any strike previously. And also, we ask the back office from your respective audit companies to do some research before going to the sector. Okay, and we have arrived to the end of this part of the presentation. So thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, of course, just don't hesitate to write them up in the Q&A part, and then we'll go through them. So we'll take a short break now, and we'll be right back after the short break, if that's okay with you, and we will reconnect at starting 10:55 local CET.
Thank you very much, Nina. So we'll take this short break, and after that we'll continue with tools, informations, and training on tools that is really important with Cecile. Thank you.